With the two-line pregnancy test in hand, I flew home earlier than planned without telling my husband, intending to cook a surprise dinner for him on the rooftop. But as the door slightly opened, I heard the laughter and breathless sounds of my husband and the neighbor woman entangled with each other. I stood frozen, then quietly stepped back and locked the steel door from the inside. By the time I pulled my suitcase out of the house, my husband was already in a panic, calling me 15 times. I am Melissa Hayes, 37 years old, and 8 years ago, I willingly gave up the chance to become Chief Technology Officer at Hayes Group in Texas, a role any professional in the industry would kill for, along with a performance bonus package worth over $300 million across 5 years if I could triple the company's profits. I gave all that up for love, moved to Boston, and married Ethan Blackwood, a financial investor I once believed to be the kindest man I'd ever met. For 8 years, I lived in his luxurious penthouse, cooking, caring, cleaning, becoming a full-time wife, quietly supporting the success of his investment career from the shadows. 2 weeks before our 8th wedding anniversary, my mother was in a car accident in Texas. I returned to take care of her, constantly reminding myself I needed to get back to Boston soon to prepare for the anniversary night I had been planning for months. But just as I was helping my mother sip water in her hospital room, a sudden wave of nausea hit me, forcing me to rush into the restroom. The pregnancy test displayed 2 clear lines, unmistakably positive. It felt like a gift from fate, arriving right as our marriage was about to enter a new chapter. I booked a flight immediately and returned to Boston earlier than planned that day. The city was blanketed in snow, the wind slicing cold against my face, but I still clutched my bag and climbed the rooftop stairs to prepare for the anniversary dinner meant for just Ethan and me. My heart pounded with anticipation for the moment when Ethan would see me, his wife, carrying our first child. But when the rooftop door cracked open slightly, the howling wind mingled with another sound, a sound I never wanted to hear. Laughter and ragged breaths. 2 bodies entangled. I froze, stunned, as I saw Ethan, my husband, kissing Nevaeh Vance, the intern who was also the daughter of his boss and lived 2 floors beneath us. Nevaeh clung to his neck, laughing lightly as snow lashed around them like a scene out of some cheap romance film. My chest tightened, but my eyes remained dry. I didn't scream. I didn't ask why. I simply stood, then quietly stepped back, shut the steel door from the inside, and locked the latch, the kind that could only be opened from within the penthouse. I walked downstairs, shut down the entire electrical system of the house, and dragged my suitcase to the front door like a shadow. Before I left, I placed the 2-line pregnancy test and the 8-week ultrasound on the kitchen counter, right where Ethan always left his car keys, as a silent, final, and most painful farewell of my life. As I stepped into the hallway, the sound of pounding on the steel door above and Ethan screaming my name echoed through the wind slamming into the building. The rooftop door I had locked could only be opened from inside, and since I had shut off all the penthouse power, even the backup digital locks were completely disabled. In the end, they were forced to use the emergency fire escape, the mandatory metal staircase attached to buildings in Boston, to descend to the building's stairwell. When Ethan finally burst through the dark penthouse door, he flipped the switches, slamming his fists against the breaker box like a madman. But everything I had turned off remained off. And then he saw the pregnancy test and the ultrasound lying neatly on the kitchen counter. In those few seconds, I knew with certainty that behind me, Ethan was frantically calling out my name, dialing number after number in a panic. But my phone was on silent, resting quietly in my bag. I pulled my suitcase out of the building's main lobby, my legs trembling as if they might give out, my breath breaking in short bursts. As I tried to swallow the sobs rising hard in my throat, Boston's snow kept lashing against my face in waves, cold enough to numb the bridge of my nose, but nothing hurt more than the feeling of being betrayed by the person I trusted most while carrying his child inside me. I dialed Lisa, my best friend since MIT, my voice shaking so much I barely recognized it myself. "Melissa? Where are you? Come to my place right now, don't drive. I'll order an Uber for you." Lisa didn't ask questions. She spoke in the steady tone she only used when she was trying to stay calm for both of us. 20 minutes later, I arrived at her apartment in Cambridge. As soon as the door opened, she rushed forward and wrapped her arms around me, and with just that familiar embrace, everything I had been holding back crashed down. All at once, I told her everything, in every detail, from the 2-line pregnancy test, to the anniversary dinner I had prepared, to Nivea's laughter cutting through the rooftop snowstorm, to the moment I locked the steel door and left them there. Lisa froze for a few seconds, then pulled me to the sofa, handing me tissues nonstop, as though letting go for even a second would cause me to shatter. When I mentioned the 8-week ultrasound I left on the kitchen counter, her voice cracked. "Oh my God, Melissa!" A moment later, Lisa's new boyfriend, Daniel Reed, stepped out of the home office. I had heard his voice many times through Lisa's stories, but this was our first time meeting. He was a well-known Hollywood divorce attorney, specializing in the assets and prenups of actors and directors, people who could lose tens of millions with a single wrong signature. He didn't say empty comforts, didn't ask, "Are you okay?" He simply sat across from me and went straight to the point. "You don't need to decide on divorce right now. What you need to do is this. Stay calm, gather evidence, and absolutely do not let him know that you know anything." I nodded, tears still wet on my lashes. "I'll confront him first. I want to hear him lie one more time, just so I know I won't regret whatever comes next." Daniel handed me a long list: photos, videos, messages, location history, financial transactions, investment schedules, everything that could turn betrayal into courtroom evidence. While Lisa made ginger tea for me, I opened my laptop and logged into the work email I had abandoned 8 years earlier. I sent a single sentence to my former boss, Mr. Henderson. "I may come back soon." Less than 10 minutes later, he replied, "Hayes Group is preparing to launch a $2.1 billion AI project. We need you." The words glowed on my screen in the dim room. For the first time in hours, I took a deep breath. Maybe my way back had already begun. Daniel approached and placed a business card in front of me. "Melissa, there's one more person you need to meet. This is Joseph Carter, the best private investigator I've ever worked with. He's solved cases the FBI has had their eyes on. If you want the truth, if you want time, and if you want to protect your child, Joseph is your best ally." I picked up the card, the light catching the print. Joseph Carter, private investigator. And in that moment, I knew my battle was only just beginning. The next morning, I held Joseph's business card in my hand, staring at the words, "Private Investigator," as if they were a reminder that from this moment on, I was no longer just a betrayed wife. I was someone seeking the truth. I called him immediately. Joseph's voice was deep, steady, and direct. "Daniel told me what you're looking for. Be at my office in Back Bay at 3 this afternoon." Hearing him made me feel as though I had opened the first door to a long, dark tunnel. Except this time, I wouldn't be walking in the dark alone. At 3 o'clock, I stepped into Joseph's office, a small but meticulously organized room, its walls covered with photos, files, maps, and red strings connecting familiar and unfamiliar names. Joseph stood, shook my hand, and his sharp eyes scanned my face, as if one glance told him exactly how many times I had cried in the past 24 hours. He wasted no time. "Daniel said you want the truth. I have a few things you should see right away." He opened his laptop, clicked on a folder labeled Ethan B., and played a video. I had never prepared myself enough for what flashed across the screen. A luxurious hotel room, dim golden lights, and Ethan, the man I had chosen, the man I had given up my entire career for, stumbling drunk and collapsing onto Nevea Vance on the sofa, whispering something against the sound of her breathy giggles. A cold numbness spread from my scalp down to my toes, not because of the shock, but because the video was recorded 1 year ago. For an entire year, he had worn the face of a devoted husband, held me every night, kissed my forehead every morning. While this secret existed, Joseph paused the video. "This is the important part." He played the next segment. Nevaeh pushing Ethan away, lifting her phone. Her voice was sharp. Nothing like the sweet innocence she displayed in public. "If you don't do what I say, I'll send this to your wife, Melissa." Hearing my name come from her mouth made humiliation burn through my skull. Joseph explained, "Neva knows Ethan is weak with alcohol and pride. She blackmailed him into dating her, traveling with her, appearing beside her as her powerful man." He fast-forwarded to Neva speaking again, softer this time, calculating. "As long as you cooperate, I'll vouch for your abilities to my father. He's recruiting for the company's new major project. All I need to do is keep this video, and you'll have everything you want." My fists clenched so tight, the knuckles turned white. But Joseph wasn't done. His voice dropped. "At first, Ethan was coerced, but after about 2 months, things changed." He showed me a screenshot. Ethan and Nevaeh at a bar. Ethan leaning in to whisper in her ear, his face no longer fearful or hesitant. He initiated it, because he believed being close to Nevaeh, whose father was grooming her to become a key leader at Blackwood Investments, would help him climb faster. I didn't know what hurt more, him betraying me out of desire, or betraying me for ambition. Perhaps both were equally brutal. I leaned back, placing my hand over my stomach, steadying my breath for the baby's sake. Joseph said quietly, "There's more, but I'll show you piece by piece, and I need you to prepare yourself, because the truth is never kind, especially when it comes from someone you once trusted completely." I held my belly, controlling my breath, but deep inside, I knew everything I had just seen was only the beginning of something far worse. Joseph closed the laptop and stayed silent for a few seconds, as if weighing whether he should continue. Then he leaned forward, his voice low. "Melissa, before you confront Nevaeh or Ethan, you need to understand what kind of person she is. Not every woman is willing to use a video to blackmail a man, unless she's done it before." I looked up, a chill crawling down my spine like needles. Joseph opened a black folder and placed it in front of me. "This is the past her family tried to bury." I turned the first page, and my heart tightened. The photo showed a younger Nevaeh in college, standing beside an older man. A professor, unmistakably. Joseph said, "She had an affair with her professor. He had a family. And his son was older than Nevaeh." I shuddered. Not at the affair itself, but at the look in her eyes in the picture. The look of someone fully aware she held the upper hand. Joseph continued, "Everything might have stayed quiet until the professor's wife found out. She filed a complaint with the university, with evidence, texts, photos." He laid out several printed pages, emails, internal memos, official complaints, all bearing Nevaeh Vance's name. The result, Nevaeh was expelled during the semester. Not suspended, not reprimanded, expelled. I swallowed. "And then?" Joseph shrugged lightly. "Her father intervened. A wealthy man with connections and political aspirations he didn't want tainted by his daughter's sex scandal." He turned to the last page, an internal email stating, "For the long-term reputational interest of the university and all involved parties, we agree to an internal resolution." Her father paid, silenced the media, forced the school to erase the record, then brought her back to Boston. I leaned back, hollow inside. Every layer of innocent, pressured, easily hurt I had ever seen on Nevaeh was nothing but a mask. Joseph's voice darkened, each word deliberate. After that incident, Nevaeh became obsessed with power, with powerful men, with the ability to shape their futures with a single whispered threat. She sees successful men as shortcuts, tools, to get everything she wants. I rested my hand on my stomach, an instinctive, protective gesture. In that moment, I understood that this battle was not only against Ethan, it was against a woman who wielded power, secrets, and ambition like toys in her hands. And I, 8 weeks pregnant, heart fractured but still beating, could not afford to be weak for even one more second. Leaving Joseph's office with the dossier on Nevaeh's past, I returned to Lisa and Daniel's apartment, shut the bedroom door, and sat in front of my laptop. It felt like I'd lived the past 8 years in a fog, and now the light had stripped everything bare. I took a deep breath, powered on the computer, and began doing something I never imagined I'd have to do. Plan for the day I'd have to protect myself. I turned on incognito mode and opened Boston's largest investment forum, the one where the financial elite track every project's movement. I drafted a post detailing Ethan's string of failed ventures. The numbers, the dates, the risks he had tried to bury. But when I finished writing, I didn't post it. I saved it to the drafts folder and titled it, If Needed. I knew clearly, silence, right now, was power next. I opened a temporary email account and wrote a short message to Nevaeh's father, attaching the intimate photos of Nevaeh and Ethan. Extracted by Joseph from hotel and bar surveillance, I wrote, "You deserve to know who you're promoting." But I didn't send it. I saved it to a locked folder, encrypted with a password only I knew one click could destroy their lives. But this wasn't the moment. Then I began organizing everything into a system. I created 3 folders on the desktop: deceit, finance, evidence. Deceit, videos, images, voice recordings of Ethan and Neva. Finance, investment reports, partner meetings, accounts Ethan had been hiding. Evidence, screenshots of messages, GPS logs, documents Joseph had supplied. Everything was backed up to an external hard drive and private cloud storage. No one but me had access. Finally, I logged into Ethan's old company email, the one he used before I left Hayes Group 8 years ago. I knew his old password, and like everything else in this marriage, he had never changed it. The inbox opened, hundreds of emails appeared. Investment schedules, risk assessments, meetings he never told me about. I downloaded the most critical ones and moved them to the finance folder, each file another puzzle piece proving that the betrayal extended beyond love, into money, reputation, and the future of me and my child. When I closed the laptop, I realized I had spent hours in a dark room, lit only by the warm yellow glow of the desk lamp. I placed my hand on my belly, feeling the tiny heartbeat growing stronger each day. For the first time since the rooftop, I felt like I had control again. Not for revenge, but for preparation, careful, clear-headed, and silent. Because I knew the time to strike was still ahead. The next morning, I decided that time had come. I texted Ethan just 3 words. "We need to talk." No explanation, no hints. I wanted him to guess, to see if the man who had deceived me for a year still knew how to fear the truth. We arranged to meet at a small cafe near Harvard Square, the same place we had sat 8 years ago when he proposed to me. I arrived early, chose a window seat, my hand resting on my belly to steady my breath. In my head, I had run through dozens of scenarios. Ethan denying, Ethan acting, Ethan blaming Nevaeh, Ethan playing the victim. I was ready for all of it. Except for what actually happened, Ethan walked in, looking gaunt, eyes red like he hadn't slept in days. The moment he saw me, he froze. I thought he would act. I thought he'd sigh, say the usual, "You misunderstood." But he didn't. He sat across from me, his hands trembling so hard they rattled the cup the waiter had just set down. And then, without a single excuse, without a second of hesitation, he broke down crying, the kind of raw, unfiltered sobbing that only happens when the facade has crumbled beyond repair. He buried his face in his hands, voice choked. "Melissa, I'm sorry. I was wrong. I was stupid. I don't know how I let things get this far." I said nothing. I wanted to see how much truth he was brave enough to speak. Ethan wiped his tears and went on. "I don't love Nevaeh. She blackmailed me, and I was weak, and I did things that can't be forgiven, but I want to fix it. I want to be the father to the child you're carrying." I said nothing. I didn't nod, didn't shake my head. I just looked straight at him, letting him walk the road of his own words. Maybe it was my silence that scared him more, because Ethan then pulled out his phone and pushed it toward me. "Here, the password. You can look at anything. I'm not hiding anything anymore." He unlocked it, opened Instagram, iMessages, email, then tapped into the blocked contacts list, searched for Nevaeh, and blocked her right in front of me without hesitation. My face remained blank, but deep inside, I noted every detail. The man sitting across from me wasn't crying from guilt. He was crying because he feared losing leverage, losing image, losing the child he now believed could make him look like a good man. Ethan took a breath, his voice softer. "I'll move out. Take all the time you need. I just want you to know. I want to make things right." I looked at him for a long while. No hatred left, just one thing: clarity. I gave him a small nod, not a yes, just a signal that this conversation was over. We stood, walked out of the cafe. Ethan went ahead. I paused for a few seconds, my hand on my belly again. A part of me whispered, this was only the first confrontation, and he had no idea how much I already knew. I returned to Lisa's apartment with a heavy feeling in my chest, something caught between relief and unease. As soon as I walked in, Lisa looked me up and down, then asked a single question. "Do you believe him?" I sank into the sofa, rubbed my eyes like I could wipe away the truth I'd just heard in the cafe. "I don't know," I sighed. He cried, he apologized, he blocked Nevaeh right in front of me, but after everything Joseph showed me, who cries from guilt and who cries from losing their advantage? Lisa didn't answer. She just rested a hand on my shoulder, her eyes softening as if to say, "You don't have to decide today, that afternoon." The doorbell rang. I thought it was the food Lisa ordered, but when I opened the door, the first thing I saw was a bouquet of white roses, the kind I loved back in Texas, cradled by the delivery man like a treasure. Beneath it was a neatly packed box of pancakes with fresh fruit, the exact breakfast I used to eat during the first few weeks of pregnancy, back when my mother was still in the hospital. Before I could say a word, the delivery man handed me a small envelope. "He asked me to give you this directly." Inside was a 5-page handwritten letter, Ethan's familiar, slightly shaky handwriting scrawled across each one. I sat at the edge of the bed and read every word. He listed 12 things he said he would change: quitting alcohol, starting therapy, turning down high-risk projects to spend time with family. He asked for a chance to be a better husband, a good father, a man who could repair what he had broken. On the final page, he wrote, "I'm not asking you to forgive me. Now I'm just asking for one chance to prove I'll never hurt you again." I don't know how long it took me to finish the letter. I only remember looking up and seeing the bouquet still on the table, the yellow light reflecting off each petal, reminding me of the early days when we still loved each other. I placed my hand on my belly. It made me soften, if only a little. I'm human. I loved him for 8 years, and I'm carrying his child. But at that very moment, in the kitchen, Lisa was standing before her laptop, reading through a thick stack of documents. When I walked over, she quickly closed it, but not fast enough to hide the title: Massachusetts Prenup and Marital Property Law. Lisa looked up, her voice soft but firm. "I don't want you to be blindsided again. I'm going over the prenup laws in the state. If you decide to divorce, we need to know what you're entitled to." I looked at the flowers, the letter, the room where I would give birth to my baby. And then, at Lisa, the only person still thinking clearly for me. A part of me melted like water, but the rest stayed steel, cold and vigilant. And maybe, just maybe, that combination is what will save me in the end. A week passed in a haze of half-belief and half-doubt. I spent each day going to prenatal checkups, regaining my strength, and rearranging my life in Lisa's apartment, rereading Ethan's letter, glancing at the bouquet that had already begun to wilt. I didn't message him, didn't meet, didn't respond to the endless texts he sent every night. I needed time, and I wanted to see if his persistence was genuine, or just performance. On Saturday morning, as the first sunlight crept through the blinds, I placed my hand on my belly, not to feel movement, but to remind myself there was a tiny life growing there, a reason to be more careful, stronger, and not step back. I opened FaceTime, my heart dipping slightly when Ethan's worn-out face appeared on screen. He didn't bother to hide the worry etched into every feature. I spoke first, my voice slow but firm. I'm giving you one chance, not to be a good husband, but to be a decent father. Ethan froze, lips parting, before he nodded repeatedly. That sentence seemed to hit the very thing he cared about most, his role as a father. He took a breath and said something I didn't expect. This Saturday, let's redo the anniversary party, just like you planned that night. I want to thank you in front of everyone, friends, family, and show them I'm making things right. I paused. Part of me saw it as a kind gesture, a public effort. But another part whispered that Ethan was trying to rebuild his image in the eyes of those around him. 8 years only come once, Melissa, he added. I want to do it right this time. I've invited around 30 people, family, friends, a few close colleagues, not to show off, just to show you I'm serious. I stayed silent for a few seconds, weighing each possibility. Was this truly a plea for a second chance, or just another staged performance? Ethan had always known how to make things look perfect, and I'd been the one believing in that surface for 8 long years. Finally, I swallowed a breath, looked at the screen, and said, Okay, I'll come. Then I ended the FaceTime call before he could say anything else. I sat still for a long while, my chest heavy. I wasn't foolish enough to fully believe in beautiful promises, but I wanted to see with my own eyes what he would do. I needed to know if the man I once loved truly wanted to make amends, or just hide his sins. I placed my hand on my belly, gently stroking the soft fabric of my shirt. For you? Mommy will give it one more try, I whispered, but deep inside, a vague instinct stirred, like a quiet warning. Something's wrong. I thought it was just the nervousness of a mother about to rebuild her life. But I was wrong. So wrong. On Friday afternoon, while I sat with Lisa going over the guest list Ethan had sent, my phone buzzed, a message from Ethan. A photo of him tasting Italian cakes for the party tomorrow. A small plate, warm golden lighting. Ethan's face strained in a forced calm, as if trying to prove he was doing his best to make things right. I was about to lock my screen, but something made me stop. My eyes were drawn to the top left corner of the photo. I zoomed in. Then again, inside the glass cake display, clear, unmistakable, even as a reflection, I saw caramel-colored hair and a turtleneck sweater I'd seen far too many times Neve Vance, standing directly behind him, looking straight into the lens. My body turned cold as if I'd been dunked in ice. Every breath halted in one blinding second. It wasn't coincidence. It wasn't misunderstanding. It wasn't just someone with a similar hairstyle. It was her. I immediately opened Find My iPhone, the very feature he'd insisted on enabling to prove trust. A green dot lit up on Boston's map, and its location wasn't Ethan's office, nor the restaurant for the party. It was our old wedding cake shop, the place where he once got on one knee, the place where he once said, I will never hurt you. My head rang, but my hands were steady enough to dial Joseph. He picked up instantly. Joseph, where are you? Back Bay, why? I need you to get to Sweet June's Bakery right now. Ethan's there, and Neve too. Joseph didn't ask another question. On my way. I ended the call and stared at the dark phone screen as if it could answer the cracks forming in my chest. My earlier instinct was right, and the truth was about to be revealed, in the cruelest way possible. Less than 40 minutes later, as I paced the living room like someone lost, my phone buzzed. It was Joseph. No long message, no explanation, just one line. Watch this. In a video attachment, I opened it. My hand began to tremble the moment the frame appeared. Ethan and Nevaeh standing close in the corner of the bakery, golden light casting every detail into clarity. Ethan leaned down and whispered into Neve's ear, his voice nothing like the man who wept before me yesterday. Melissa's such an idiot. I clenched my hands, but the video only grew more brutal. Ethan leaned closer, whispering again, his voice captured clearly by Joseph's mic. 8 years ago, Melissa and I signed a prenup. It states that if one cheats, the cheater walks away with nothing. I just need to adjust a few clauses, and she'll lose everything. His tone was calm, confident, cruel. I felt my knees go weak, like the ground beneath me was sinking inch by inch, but the video continued. Ethan glanced sideways, voice lowered, but the mic still caught it. Then it's divorce. Simple, clean. No hesitation, I stood frozen. No screaming, no collapsing, not even a tear. Maybe the pain had reached a point beyond crying. The room was silent, so quiet I could hear the ticking of the wall clock, like it was counting down the moment my heart would shatter to dust. I stared at the fading screen as the video ended. A metallic coldness spread from my chest to my knees. I didn't cry. I couldn't. And in that still silence, a thought cut into my mind, sharp and bitter. I was a fool to forgive. Not because I was weak, not because I believed his apology, but because I didn't trust my own instinct, the one I should have listened to from the start. I set my phone down and took a long, deep breath. Pain didn't destroy me, it turned me to stone. And I knew, from this moment on, everything would end on my terms. Saturday night, I walked into the penthouse I once called home. The golden lights twinkled. The sound of clinking glasses filled the air. Long silk table runners draped across tables. White flowers adorned every corner. 30 guests filled the room, dressed as if attending a gala. Ethan's colleagues, relatives, friends, a few senior investors I had once hosted myself. Everyone laughed, toasted, chatted. No one knew that in just a few minutes, this party would become a public trial. Ethan appeared in a charcoal suit, face beaming like the star of some coming-of-age celebration. When he saw me, he gave me a look of fake gratitude, so theatrical it almost made me laugh. He raised his glass at the center of the room, voice deep with forced emotion. "Thank you to my wife for forgiving me. Thank you for giving me a chance to become the man I should have been." All eyes turned to me. I didn't raise my glass. I didn't smile. I simply pressed the button hidden in my coat pocket. The 85-inch TV lit up. The room fell into dead silence. On screen, Ethan and Neva in a hotel room, skin on skin, lips locked, breath wild like animals. Some guests gasped. An older woman dropped her glass. Ethan turned pale, frozen in place. I pressed the second button. Ethan's text to Nevi appeared, white letters on black. "Melissa's such an idiot." A wave of whispers erupted, words rippling like a tidal wave across the room. Then the third video, Sweet June's Bakery, audio crisp as glass. "Melissa signed a prenup. If she divorces me for cheating, I lose everything. I just need to fix a few clauses, and she's done. Then it's divorce." Ethan could no longer stand. He gripped the table to stay upright. The screen continued. A slide appeared. Detailed losses from Ethan's failed projects. Millions evaporated. Glowing red numbers. Risk reports he had hidden. Guests exchanged looks. Some muttered under their breath, "Oh my God." "Unbelievable." "How long has Melissa known?" I stepped forward, opened my purse, and pulled out a folded document. I stood exactly 3 steps from Ethan. He stammered, "Melissa, I can explain. Smack. The divorce papers landed square on his chest. I looked straight into the eyes that once made me believe in forever, and I spoke each word with clarity. No trembling, no choking, no love. "Thank you for waking me up a second time." The whole room held its breath. No one moved. No one dared sip their champagne. Ethan Blackwood's 8-year anniversary party, in less than a minute, had become a public trial he couldn't escape. And I walked out of that penthouse for the last time, lighter than ever before. I didn't look back, didn't care what anyone was saying, didn't bother to see if Ethan had collapsed, or if Neve was hiding behind the dessert table. The elevator doors closed in front of me, like the final period at the end of 8 years of marriage. I pulled my coat tighter as I stepped out of the lobby. That Boston night was so cold, my breath turned into white smoke, yet somehow my chest felt warmer than it had in years. I opened the ride app, my hands no longer trembling. As the yellow cab rolled up to the curb, I placed my hand on my belly and whispered, mostly to myself, "We're done here." The cab drove me through streets I had traveled for 8 years. streets I had rushed through to make it in time for dinner with Ethan, to care for him, to make his life easier. Now, all of it became a blur of dim lights fading behind me. I lowered the window, letting the night air wash over me one last time before leaving Boston. At 3 a.m., I booked the earliest flight to Texas. I couldn't sleep, not from pain, but because I could see my new life slowly taking shape. When the plane touched down in San Antonio, my mother was there, her hands trembling on the armrest of her seat. I walked toward her, rested my head on her shoulder, and for the first time since learning I was pregnant, I allowed myself to take a deep breath, as someone who had survived. My father drove us home, saying little, but watching me through the rearview mirror with an expression I'll never forget. The look of a father who sees his daughter finally free from what once hurt her. 3 months later, the divorce hearing took place. The courtroom was as silent as a chapel. My lawyer, Daniel, laid out every financial document and proof of infidelity before the judge. Each slide projected like a mirror, reflecting truths Ethan could no longer deny. Then the verdict was read, brief, clear, non-negotiable. I received the entire Boston penthouse. I received all shared savings accounts and stock. Ethan was ordered to pay child support until our child turned 18. Ethan said nothing. He just slumped into his seat like a man who had watched his future vanish in a single sentence. A few weeks later, I flew back to Boston one final time. I signed the papers selling the penthouse, the home I once believed was a sanctuary, and finalized the purchase of a small lakeside house in Texas, just 10 minutes from my parents. It wasn't luxurious. It wasn't grand, but it had morning breezes off the lake, willow trees casting shadows on the water, and a quiet sky I'd never known in 8 years of marriage. Standing at the doorstep of my new home, I placed a hand on my belly, and for the first time since that rooftop night, I smiled, a real smile, with no trace of pain. From here, we begin again. And just as I had whispered on the porch of that lakeside house, my life truly turned a new page. 3 months later, on a gently sunny morning, I heard my baby boy's first cry echo through the delivery room at Texas Methodist Hospital. When the nurse placed him on my chest, I nearly forgot all the contractions, forgot the pain of 9 months of pregnancy lived in solitude. I looked at that tiny face. The straight nose, the little pursed lips, and especially those deep, dark eyes just like mine. And in that moment, I understood I had reclaimed something Ethan could never take away. My future Oliver Blackwood Hayes, I whispered. A name that carried part of the past, but opened into all of the future. News of Oliver's birth reached Hayes Group faster than I expected. Just 2 days after I was discharged, my former CEO, Mark Henderson, called on video. He looked at me, then at Oliver sleeping on my shoulder, and smiled gently. "We've kept the CTO seat open for you. The board wants you back. The $2.1 billion AI project is entering its most critical phase." I gently brushed a lock of hair off Oliver's forehead and smiled, this time not feeling any pressure hearing about a powerful role. "Mark, let me wait until Oliver is stronger. I'll come back when I'm ready." He was about to say more, but I continued, my voice calmer and firmer than the woman I had been 8 years ago. "But if needed, I can still consult remotely. I'm not disappearing." Mark nodded, his eyes warmer than any congratulatory message. "That's reassuring enough, Melissa." I ended the call and looked down at Oliver, shifting slightly in my arms. Back in Boston, I used to think the future had only one path. But here in Texas, in this lakeside home, with afternoon sun filtering through the curtains onto my child's face, I understood that the future could always be rebuilt, so long as I chose the right person to begin again with. And this time, I chose myself. I set my phone aside, pulled the blanket over Oliver so he could sleep more peacefully, and stepped out onto the balcony, gazing at the rippling lake under the soft Texas dusk. From here, my life had taken a different turn, lighter, calmer. And at the same time, I began hearing whispers of the turn Ethan's life had taken. About a week after Oliver was born, the first articles started appearing on Boston's financial pages. Ethan Blackwood was officially terminated from Blackwood Investments after the scandal from the 8-year anniversary party exploded. Partners withdrew contracts, 3 key projects were frozen, and investors demanded full audits of all records. The name once celebrated in investment circles had become a textbook case of dishonor and incompetence. A few months later, his situation didn't improve. No firm dared hire a man caught in a scandal of both infidelity and financial misconduct. His reputation vanished, swiftly, cleanly, and more brutally than any court ruling. The colleagues who once toasted with Ethan in his luxury penthouse now avoided him like a living legal liability. By the 9th month, Daniel called me. "Ethan's unemployed. Moved back to Hadley to live with his parents, working on the family farm." I felt no joy, no bitterness, just a sense of natural order, like the still water of the lake outside my house, reflecting exactly what had happened before. And Nevaeh? Her father, the man who once used power and money to cover her past scandal, couldn't shield her this time. He cut off all financial support, sent her to Europe to study a new program, just to escape the reputation crumbling around them in Boston. And Joseph was the one who told me the final line, light as a pebble dropping into water. They broke up right after the scandal hit. Loudly. Nevaeh said Ethan was dead weight. Ethan said she ruined him. I said nothing, because I knew sometimes life doesn't need us to seek revenge. It rebalances itself, and the price they paid, each of them, wasn't by my hand, but by the consequences of their own choices. I closed the laptop, picked up Oliver, and stepped out onto the porch. The late afternoon sun spilled across the Texas fields, turning the earth into a golden carpet ablaze with sunset light. I held my son close, feeling the small warmth I had protected for months. Oliver squinted against the light, his tiny hand unconsciously gripping my finger. We stood there, beneath the wind sweeping through open land, beneath a sky so vast that every old pain suddenly seemed small. I used to think forgiveness was strength, I said softly, as if retelling the story just for myself. I used to believe that if you loved enough, every mistake could be repaired. I looked into Oliver's dark, deep eyes he inherited from me, not from a man who traded love for cheap power. But sometimes, I whispered, forgiveness is just postponing the pain. I smoothed his fine hair, my heart growing lighter with every quiet breath he took. This time, I choose myself and my son. No more noise from endless arguments. No more nights wondering what I did wrong. No more shadows of the man I once believed was my safe harbor. No hatred, no loud revenge, just walking away. Because sometimes, silence is the most beautiful kind of freedom. The evening wind swept through the grasslands, carrying the scent of warm soil and late sun. I held Oliver close, resting my cheek gently against his forehead, a promise unspoken but whole. We walked back inside, the door closing behind us like the final page of one chapter and the very first line of the next. If my story touched you, please like, subscribe, and share this video so that other women can find their strength too. Thank you for staying until the end. I'll see you in the next video.